Today's workshop is just sort of a housekeeping thing. In the past few years, NSF and NIH have modified their formats for some of the background documents, see your Biosketch, and current and pending primarily. They're pretty simple, but if you've never submitted to them before or you submitted to them longer ago than a couple of years, you may not be aware. So I'm going to turn this over to our capable presenters and let them carry on and explain. They all have deep experience. Many of you know Samantha Cantrell. Samantha Cantrell. Dr. Cantrell is one of the pre-award specialists in ORSP. She's been helping faculty submit proposals here for 15 years. She is an expert with all federal agencies. Dr. Ginger Rowell is also an experienced PI in our math department. Ginger has deep experience with NSF and Department of Ed, as well as some state agencies. And Dr. Greg Rushton, who is our fairly recently installed new director for the Tennessee STEM Education Center. Also deep experience with Department of Education and National Science Foundation. They've decided how they want to carve this up. I think they have some slides for you. Casey Penston is in charge of the logistics for today, and I will entrust our presenters to field questions in whatever manner they choose. And with that, I think Ginger's going to kick it off. Is that right? So you all have a great time. Thanks for showing up. I hope it's informative and make good use of these folks. Don't leave with any questions unanswered. That's why they've carved time out today, is to be with you for this specifically. So.
Thank you, Jeff. I will say that I will be monitoring the chat box. So if you have any questions, this is a pretty informal gathering. So just feel free to raise your hand within Zoom here, or type it into the chat, or just ask our presenters. So I do believe, according to our lineup, Dr. Rushton is going to start us off. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Ginger.
Yeah, okay.
Greg should let you go first, but that's okay.
Yeah, if you want to go first, Ginger, I'm happy to have you. Okay.
I'm gonna jump out and I'll leave it to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah. Okay, so we split up different agencies and different documents. If you guys want to put in the chat if there's anything that we're not covering in these really brief intro sections, if we can get to it while we're presenting, we can do it. If not, we can have some Q&A afterwards. But I've been asked to talk about the biosketches, current and pending, postdoc mentoring plan. So I'm going to share my screen, and you guys can nod your head if you can see what I'm sharing. How's that look, Casey? Can you see? Can you see? Okay. So I have these other tabs here. If I click on that tab, can you see that one, Casey, too?
Yes.
Can you see the NSF Biosketch? Okay, cool. So I'm going to leave this in non-present mode just so I can kind of walk through some of these. Okay, so Science CV is relatively new. Give you a little bit of background info on it. I just started using it last year. It's basically an electronic system where you can create documents for different federal agencies. Okay, and so it was developed in partnership between research institutions and several federal agencies. Those are listed here in the second bullet. Department of Defense, Energy, EPA, and then the other ones that we know. And the goal is for it to make it a more efficient process to generating these documents when you're doing your submissions. We'll talk about the Biosketch first. It does both NSF and NIH IES. So IES is the Department of Ed research arm, Institute of Education Sciences. You can go up to 5 pages for the senior personnel on these proposals, and only 2 pages on NSF. And so I just have 2 that basically this generates. So this is basically what you're going to get out of this system for NSF Biosketch. You just have the same 4 sections that NSF has asked for, for the last several years: your education, your appointments, and the publications, closely related, and then your other ones that are related or not, and then your synergistic activities. For NIH and IES, you have the personal statement. You have more sections like the contribution to research and so on. So this system will generate either one. So I'm going to kind of walk you through it just a little bit, how it works. You have to set up an account. When you do, you get, let me see if I can go back one. Okay, so when you log into ScienceCV, there's a dashboard here. Down in the bottom right hand corner, can you still see this, Casey? Okay, you can go to Manage ScienceCV, and that's where you actually create the document. So I'll do one real quick here, just so you can see. You have to name it, and then it gives you these choices. You can do NIH or NSF, and notice you can do the Biosketches, or you can do current and pending, and you can generate it either from a blank document, which is similar in some senses to what Ginger's going to show with these electronic forms, or you can either modify an existing document, or you can actually import it if you have an NSF ID or a profile, ERI Commons. Or if you have ORCID, which is the way I imported some of these documents. So as you probably know, ORCID is connected to a lot of publishers now, and it's also connected to ScienceCV. So anyway, you can make it either public or private, and I'll just go back to one of the ones I've made. So the cool thing about these documents is that if you want to modify your existing information, what you can do is, like for example, you have a different proposal you're submitting for, you can actually select the citations that you want to use instead of either cutting and pasting from your CV, or or hopefully not typing them. But if you have a PubMed account for NIH, you can pick them from there, or you can just pick any from the list of publications that are imported. So that's pretty helpful, and then you just save it and make it a new document. So if you look at my list, for example, I have several different biosketches depending on what the project is, and just tweaking the synergistic activities and the publications you want to use. Okay, so let me go back here. So for current and pending, these don't have a specific format, but this is what you can generate from this system as well. Let's see, so it does nice formatting for you, and then it's actually somewhat similar to what Ginger's going to show you, where you actually complete the forms. But the nice thing about ScienceCV that I thought might be useful to you is you can actually, let's see, if we make a new document and then just do an NSF current and pending. I'm going to start with my existing document, which it's a little bit embarrassing, but here, so this will be ORSP. So this will pull up like my current and pending, and since some of these have already been rejected since then, you can either delete them from your account, or I use this this category. Since I'm going to try to resubmit it, you can do a submission planned. Instead of having to delete the whole entry, you can change its status instead of current to and not rejected or deleted. You can just go do I'm going to resubmit it. So it's pretty easy to update in this system, which I thought was useful to know. Okay, for postdoc mentoring plans. So for this is specific to NSF. These requirements, and this is from the PAPPG, the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures, which it's actually not that bad of a document to read. I used to be scared of it and just made the ORS worry about that, but I've been reading it lately. It's actually pretty clear. So if you look at the requirements, it's really doesn't have a specific format. It just says basically you have to describe the mentoring plan. Now what's interesting is they give you an example of all the things that you can include in the postdoc plan. And in the examples that I found and the examples that I've generated, like here's one from Harvard, like it actually, oh, here it is. Let me pull it up real quick. It actually goes through all of those categories. So I'm sorry, let me see if I can pull up this one without it being difficult. Okay, this is on Google Docs, so you'll be able to see it. So it's interesting that all the topics that they give you in the PAPPG are oftentimes the topics that people address in these postdoc mentoring plans. So I'm happy to share any ones that we've generated here in TSEC over the last several years. If you want examples, I try to make them fairly generic so that you don't have to tweak them very much from proposal to proposal. And I haven't had a review panel say that there was anything wrong with them yet. So if you want any of ours, we're happy to share. And that's all I've got. How did I do it? Maybe 8-10 minutes. That wasn't too bad, right? Okay. I was not checking the chat, Casey, so I didn't see if there were any questions, but.
Right. There was one question that said, is this only for the field of science?
Well, so this is for these specific federal agencies, right? So, I mean, NSF funds anything in STEM, right? So, but there are like social science, directors and so on. So, I mean, NIH is, biomedical research, right? So I consider that science. And then USDA, IES. So IES doesn't necessarily have to be science research. That's just any educational research. So, I guess the actual answer is no, it's not just for science proposals. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and on to Ginger.
Are there any questions for Dr. Rushton before we move on? Okay, Dr. Rowell, thank you.
Yep.
There you go, unmuted now, and I'll share my screen. And our intent is to do these kind of quickly so that we leave more time for questions in the end. So I'm going to talk about more odds and ends, but I'm focusing on NSF proposals in particular. And Greg mentioned the Proposal and Awards Policy and Procedures Guide, the PAPPG. You can see why he just used the initials so much for that. Used to have the GPG, the Grant Proposal Guide, but they've merged them together. And I've got the links for various things in here. So this will be posted and you just click these links to find them. It provides information on all parts of the proposal, right? But we're just focusing on certain things today, and I'm picking the forms approach for the biosketches, current pending, and then I'll mention collaborators. It has a form too. And then there's facilities and equipment that sometimes people have questions about that part, and the data management plan. So in particular, the NSF has fillable forms, right? And they give the hint for all of these that you should download the PDF form first, save it as a blank one, and then add your content. Because we all know sometimes we've done it on the web, we save and something happens and it doesn't save, right? So they also have a guide for all their fillable form questions, and it covers all of them. And this would cover not only general issues, but like if you had a Macintosh issue with a fillable form, it gives little hints for those as well. So the first one to talk about is the Biosketch. Greg showed that. This is his method with the Science CV is much more efficient, much more elaborate, and I think it's great. But I wanted to say that every once in a while, you're in a hurry and you might be afraid to start a new thing. And you're like, okay, I can use a PDF form. And that's exactly what this is. So you just put in your name and your information. I was hesitant when I first had to change mine over, or at least just discouraged that I had to go to a new format. And every once in a while I have trouble with forms, but it was not any problem. The biggest hints are, it talks about products now that don't have to be publications. The NSF form used to require 10 publications. Then it broke it down to 5 publications related to the project. 5 could be anything. But with this, in the products, they can be other things. And so the key is to make your products, and Greg mentioned synergistic activities, make those fit with the proposed project. Here you might have to retype them, but when I'm evaluator, I have one and I keep all those things together. When I'm the PI for something else, I have a different one and I have different products on there. Like when I'm a PI, I emphasize the PI kinds of things I've done in the past. And when I'm an evaluator, I emphasize the evaluator things. So make it fit the project. And Greg was showing you how to do that on the Science CV, which is a great tool. Current and pending. They do now have forms that you fill out. A couple of things related to this. One thing, it's just type in the project, type in your status, and notice that submission planned is now in a status, right? Sometimes it's a little tricky to get all of the information, right? With these, they did say that you could approximate the amount to the best of your ability. So if you didn't know exactly, and that's helpful. I used to worry so much when the project that you are submitting has to be in the pending. Okay, so the project that you're submitting has to be in the pending. And I was like, oh, I don't know yet how much it is. And I want to go ahead and fill this part out and be done. But so you can give some estimates here and they aren't going to throw anything out. Also, I think sometimes the year and the person months, it used to be that you could set it up with summer months, but now they want it for the person months. So they kind of keep getting a little bit more specific. Okay. And then there's plenty of pages. I have like 15 places for you to put things in. And if you have more than those, I don't know exactly what you'll do, but you'll figure it out. So then they have collaborators and other affiliations for NSF that has to be done. And it is now in an Excel form. The first time you do it, it takes a little time, but once you get past that, updating them is not hard. It lists different types of collaborators. It has all of those things set up specifically in it. You have to pull down your menu as to whether somebody is an author collaborator or a research collaborator, but they have little things to pull down from that. So it's not difficult. You just keep adding lines for adding more people in those. And you put your last active dates. And since you only have to have certain things, right? This is individuals and organizational affiliations for the last 12 months, then you can just delete them if you haven't affiliated with them in a certain time. And these were different amounts of times previously. So just kind of keep your eyes open for some of those making changes. And then of course, your dissertation advisor is there forever. So, okay. So then the next thing is facilities, equipment, and other resources. So this is an opportunity in some sense to stretch information that would be, you might feel like should be in the proposal and actually put it here. It lets you tell about things related to your facilities and equipment that MTSU will provide that help you complete the project successfully. And that's the key. Focus on things that make a difference for broader impacts and for your intellectual merit. So if you have equipment here, like some big science equipment or something like that, that you can't find somewhere else, or some computer software that is needed there, you could list those there. If you're doing class testing and you have these special classrooms where you have the two-way mirrors, you can list that there. But you can also list resources as people that would enable you to be successful as well. So it's personnel as well as physical resources. And that can be something that you can give more information about to tell that. Now, it's as a narrative is in the proposal guide. You have to write it as a narrative. But I will say that I still use bulleted list within my narrative because I find, at least as a reviewer, I can glance at those more quickly. It pops out the really important information. I highlight things and bold things to make it easier for them to see quickly. Please remember, don't put any financial information in this that's quantifiable. The data management plan can be unique to each division. So the first thing you do is go to the link and find out if you're doing one just for mathematical sciences, which might be different from education, the Division of Undergraduate Education, for example. And again, this is the one for NSF. 2 pages are the maximum here. And again, it's a chance for you to talk about things and sort of expand on things in a way that is related to your broader impacts and your intellectual merit. Please keep in mind that data doesn't just mean a list of columns and numbers in an Excel spreadsheet. It can be samples, it can be your physical collection, it could be software, but it can be curriculum materials and other materials that you produce. And then they give a very specific kinds of things you're supposed to do, which are, the types of data produced, the standards used based on what they are, the policies for sharing that, how are you going to allow reuse of it, and plans for archiving. So this may be one of those that you want to talk to a few other people who've already done things to make sure that you feel like you've covered all the bases if it's new, and you got to get it in with 2 pages. So don't get too carried away. All right. So those are the things I'm supposed to talk about for NSF. Let me stop sharing. And if there are any quick questions, or we can move over to Samantha.
Hey Ginger, since you had like kind of an inside scoop to NSF, in your life, relative to like the intellectual merit, broader impacts, review criteria, these supplemental documents, where would you put it on the continuum of required but no one cares about it to important and people actually look at them and help make decisions based on them?
Yeah, so when they first put that mentoring plan in there and that it was required, proposals got sent back that didn't have it. It's like, you don't have this, it's required. And so it was a big deal. It's been a while since I've been at NSF, so I'm not exactly sure. For those who don't know, I was a program officer in the Division of Undergraduate Education for 2 years a while back. And so it was a great experience learning those kinds of things. If you have the best idea out there and everything is great, and you left off some details that they wonder about in maybe the facilities, they might ask, right? So the program officer, you're down to negotiations. Hey, this sounds really good, but I'm not sure that this is good enough. They might ask some questions. Or you didn't make it clear how you were going to manage this part of your data. You did everything else, but you left this off, and they would talk to you about it. Those would be more things to clean up than necessarily a deal breaker when I was there in my division, right? If it's chemistry and you don't have a piece of equipment that you need, that could be a whole nother story. They can't do this without that equipment. They don't have this equipment. Therefore, that page is really important for specifying what you do have related to completing the project.
And I'll just share briefly, our project, the ones that we're getting funded and submitting for, are very data intensive, and they are scrutinizing the data management plans, and the review panels are actually asked to comment on them in the review. So, and that's again just in the divisions that I'm applying for. So I think, like Ginger was saying, depends on the program, but you might want to get with program officers in your division to see how important those documents really are.
Thank you both. Dr. Cantrell.
Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, is that showing up for people? I just wanted to add one comment about current impending support. In 2019, in the summer 2019, back when people were getting on planes and going to big conferences, I attended the national meeting for National Council of Research Administrators, and they invite a lot of the federal agencies there to talk about new issues and issues that we should be aware of. The current impending support was a big topic in the summer of 2019. And one issue that was being raised by multiple federal agencies is foreign influence, and that there's, I'm not saying people are necessarily influenced by foreign organizations, but they wanted everything disclosed, and they mentioned something like STAR programs, talent programs, where somebody can be sponsored by an overseas institution and be compensated, but not really putting a lot of effort in. That still has to be disclosed, because I think it was also sort of coming into this discussion about sponsored programs from concerns about influences on U.S. elections. So that was one of the issues that was being talked about a lot in 2019. And the second issue I would mention about NSF current and pending is that they also want to see internal support and anything that requires a time commitment, even if you're getting paid little to nothing on it, but you do know you have to put some effort on it. So that includes startup packages. So in recent submissions I've been working on with people for NSF, we've had to look up, what is your startup package? How, roughly how much time do you think that's going to occupy for you? So, but you guys did a great job. I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on that. And thank you, Ginger, for mentioning don't quantify support in facilities and other resources, because NSF is very opposed to cost share in almost all of there's one or two programs that require cost share, but otherwise they don't want cost share quantified. So if you mention a resource as a person, they don't want to know the value of that. And that's because cost share can become an administrative burden, both for the institution and for the agency. So anyway, let me get on then to USDA and NIH. And we haven't covered every agency here. We're focusing on some that are some of our heavy, a lot of proposals going out to these particular, let me make sure I'm in the right. There we go. So USDA is another one. We've got a lot of people applying to USDA. And so there are three important documents, not with every single USDA application, but it's often the case. This is a familiar pattern for me, that I'm downloading 3 different documents when I'm helping a faculty member. So the RFA, request for applications, sometimes they'll issue an RFA, educational workforce development, EWD, but then they'll have like 20 topic areas within that. So they'll have one controlling RFA. We have to download. It has the main thrust and funding limitations and deadlines. But then they'll refer you to another one called the supplemental document. It's usually like part Roman numeral 4, Roman numeral 4C, part 4C. Not always that number, but anyway, it's referenced in the RFA. They give you a link. And there they'll go through very specific bullet points about each element of the proposal, like some of these elements we've been talking about, although they're going to look a little bit different for USDA. And finally is the Nefa grants.gov application guide, which is the overarching guidance. It's parallel to the PAPPG at NSF. So since we're covering biographical sketches, and is USDA on Science CV? I didn't see it there. It's not. Okay. So, but as with NSF, you're limited to 2 pages, and NIH is 5 pages. And the reason for this is for the reviewer's sake, right? You've got to hit the relevant information. Don't send them everything you've ever done. These agencies are imposing these limits on CVs or biographical sketches for the sake of the reviewers, and we're getting the relevant information in there. Now, I pulled these bullet points from that the Nefa guide that I mentioned. They also mention in there collaborators, but there has been some confusion. They seem to want us to be taking collaborators off because they do have a COI form separately. So we definitely want these 3 bullets: education and training, research and professional experience, and publications and synergistic activities. And as with NSF, you're focusing on what is most relevant for that particular proposal. So some of the other elements that look a little bit different than the NSF elements. And by the way, ORSP can provide support in when you're preparing these current and pending forms, provided we have the staff capability. We're a little short-staffed right now, but we often have the access to everything that you're doing. Maybe we need some input if you're doing some, if you've got startup packages, but we can help with those current and pending forms. This one, oops, I didn't mean to, oops, go back. This one, I will say, is this following me around so you can see? Hang on, it's gonna open. I hope it's good. Oh, my word is starting. Sorry, I should have started that before the program. This current pending form from USDA, I tell you, is one of the most frustrating documents. Can you see it? Is it showing up? It's one of the most frustrating documents to format and interpret, because they talk about often with NSF, we're talking about academic year commitment and summer commitment. They're really thinking in terms of calendar year effort. So I'm having to convert people's summertime to what the full-time equivalency is for academic year. And I can do that for people pretty easily. But this is just a frustrating form because they want everybody, not just your name, but your name and everybody who's listed as a co-PD on there. And so these forms are a little bit frustrating to deal with, but this is what USDA has provided us as a template, and this is what we're using. And I can help with this, provided you give me plenty of notice. It takes me a little bit of time to put these together. Okay, so that's the current pending form for USDA. The COI form is also different from USDA. Here it comes. So it's similar. NSF has that Excel sheet, and then you have to put it on an Excel table. This one is a Word, this one's not as bad, I think, as that current pending form. It's a pretty straightforward document. This is something I cannot help you with. Obviously, this is something that you're going to know and be able to complete on your own. So then. The last form I wanted to show you is the project summary, because it's not always the case that you're putting your abstract on an agency form, but often with USDA, you're actually using a form. It's not always. The thing about federal agencies, you always have to read your specific guidelines, because sometimes there can be some variances from the normal overall guidance. So this is typical, though, for USDA, and often in this 250 words, you may have some more specific instructions within that guidance about identifying the specific objectives listed in the RFP that are addressed, like the agency objectives that are addressed by your particular project. So always you're doing these forms and watching those that guidance, holding it side by side.
Samantha, before we move off of USDA, there is a couple of questions I was going to read
Sure.
here. It said the CP form from USDA, is that required, or is this just a suggested format?
No, it's almost always a required form. Again, we have to go by the guidelines for the specific RFP, but I'm trying to think. The ones I've been working on recently all require it. There may be a case where it's not required, but and as with NSF, you need to include the current proposal as one of your entries. So I've had an example where I was trying to pull these forms together from our people as well as the subawardees at other universities, and they didn't have any other projects, so they didn't send me a current pending form. But I had to complete a form that had this proposal on it, because that becomes a pending proposal once it's submitted. Okay. So that's usually the case with most current pending forms. You include the proposal you're submitting as part of that pending, so that they get a full picture of your time commitment.
Right. And you might have already touched on this, but the second part said, can we use the NSF for this too?
Yeah, like the question, this question, Samantha, is if these certain federal agencies are asking for essentially the same information, but their forms are awkward or cumbersome, can we use other agencies' forms?
I wouldn't. I'm hoping that the movement will be towards getting USDA and other agencies in that Science CV, and that and I believe Science CV is a product of the Federal Demonstration Partnership, which is agencies and recipients of federal funding coming together to try to reduce administrative burden and standardize. Right now, I would not recommend. They're so specific in that form that their form is. Let's see, where'd it go? It's quite different from NSF, and I just they ask for the award pending proposal number, which sometimes we have, sometimes we don't. I think most of the information is the same, but I would not recommend using a NSF form for it. Just for now, until they do get on board with Science CV, I wouldn't recommend using a NSF for the USDA. Same thing with the COI. Other questions? Hopefully there will be more standardization, more people, more agencies getting on board with the Science CV. Okay. So some of the elements that we've already discussed are also going to be elements of the USDA, but sometimes even additional elements, facilities we've talked about, and I think that the guidance is going to be roughly the same for USDA. Logic model is often a component, not always, but a logic model can be a component of USDA. So, you know, that's something that sometimes people need to make sure they have enough time to do, because it's more familiar to some disciplines than others. Management plan versus data management plan. Management plan has to do with sort of personnel and how roles and responsibilities are divided up, and a data management plan. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are some typical elements that you will have to prepare for many of the larger USDA opportunities. But those are the 4 I wanted to emphasize. NIH. This one, oh, NIH. It's one of the more complex organizations that you'll run across. And these guiding documents, the PAR is the program announcement, and the R at the end there, from what I was reading, is that if there's something specific about the PA that sort of distinguishes it, has some sort of specific criteria, it'll have the R at the end. So the program announcement, and then the guiding document, the larger guiding document, as we've discussed on all the agencies, there's going to be a larger guiding document. Now this one, 157 pages. This one is filtered specifically for research. So they've got this enormous guide, and then you can filter it for fellowships or filter it for training grants. Oh, there's different ways you can filter it. This one that I just pulled up is filtered for research. And it goes through all of these elements that you're going to have to prepare. The frustrating part of applying to NIH, and some of you may know this from applying for it, is it sometimes will send you in complete circles. So you'll be in the program announcement, it'll send you to this document, then this document will send you to a place in the website, and that website will send you back to the program announcement, and you'll go in a complete circle. So it's an interesting, NSF has done a beautiful job of making things consistent. You know, their guidance is consistent. Their instructions are clear. Their portals for uploading are very well honed and specific. NIH is getting there in terms of they've created a portal called Assist, which is a system-to-system operation where we can upload everything, gets pulled into grants.gov, which is the post office, and the post office then sends it back to ERA Commons. And a lot of times in past submissions for NIH, before they had Assist, we would get it all into grants.gov, which is the federal post office, essentially. It would pull into Commons, and it would get kicked out for errors or warnings. Assist, because it's system to system, when we upload all these elements, it will catch the same sorts of errors and warnings that would be caught by Commons. So we send it to Assist. Assist pulls it into Commons, into grants.gov, and grants.gov then sends it back to the agency, which is again NIH ERA Commons. Some of the standard elements. So we've already mentioned that you can use the Science CV for the biographical sketch. NIH is a 5-page document, but I do want to caution you that there is a brand new, it just came out in December, a brand new format. If you're using, instead of using Science CV, you're using their template. Be aware that it came out in December. It's good through February of 23. So, okay. So facilities and other resources is here again. Equipment is usually an element if you're using some larger pieces of equipment to conduct your research. Okay, IRB and IACUC, which is human subject research and animal research, is going to come up much more often when you're doing medical research. So those processes are something that you have to understand and be clear about. But the approvals themselves, like the actual IRB approval or the actual IACUC approval, I guess everybody knows Institutional Research Board, which governs human research. IACUC, Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, governs animal research. Approvals for NIH can be just in time. That is, if you get to a certain stage of review, then they'll say, okay, now we see your IRB, now we see your IACUC. So you don't necessarily have to have them at the moment you submit, but you have to have a clear understanding of his methodologies and protocols at the time of submission, because there are elements of the proposal that ask about your specific IACUC and IRB processes and protocols. Other considerations. A lot of times we're applying for something called an area grant, and we're specifically eligible because of our lower level of NIH funding and our primarily undergraduate institution, our status as a primarily undergraduate institution. We complete that. And I believe Tiffany's on here. I completed one for her recently and then forgot to attach it. We were fortunate that NIH was able to come back and ask for that, and her proposal could still go forward, but I felt so bad. But that's something to consider. That's something that we're preparing on your behalf, and we have to make sure that it gets done in advance of the deadline. And because NIH is the PHA's Public Health Services Agency, they require compliance, and they're more deliberate and intentional about making us certify this compliance. I think the financial conflict of interest is in place for most agencies right now, but NIH is particularly, that puts a lot of scrutiny on this. So there is a training that we have available through Citi. It's a mini financial conflict of interest course. I encourage PIs to get that done before submission, because some of the certifications we put on out there for other universities, once they want to know that this is being complete, it's being done. And there's also a financial conflict of interest form, disclosure of significant financial interest. We have a specific form here at MTSU that we use, and we like to make sure that people are up to date on those disclosures, or non-disclosures. You can just say, I don't have any of these. It asks you the specific types of financial investments and interest that you have. And if you say no, then that's the end of your disclosure. But if there's something else you have to disclose, there's an additional part of the form. So I think that's it. Now, I know we haven't covered all the agencies, but I believe this was advertised just for NSF, NIH, and USDA. So that's what we've focused on.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? You can ask or pop those in the chat bar.
Or just anything you guys want to talk about. I mean,
Okay, so we have one come through. Should you apply for IACUC approval prior to grant submission?
I would. I mean, I'll just give you my experience. I don't know if it's relevant, but if I'm going to do even like a pilot study without the project being funded, I would go ahead and do it. If you're not going to do the study unless it's funded, then I wouldn't do it. Unless it's going to require some, like, a really long process, or it's going to be, need special consideration. That's just my personal opinion.
And I mentioned it's a just-in-time element for NIH. And by the way, like current pending other elements are also just-in-time for NIH. After you get past a certain level of review. I know that some of these processes, IRB and IACUC, can take a while sometimes to complete. So if you have it underway, at least when you're submitting, because if you get a protocol approved, it can always be extended, right? So like, if it's going to expire before the grant comes in, you can you can usually apply for an extension. I think that's right, isn't it? So it's something I would not, like with NSF, there's a just-in-time mechanism, I believe, too, for IRB and IACUC. The NSF window for just-in-time is very short. It's a very short turnaround. So if you get to that point, just realize you may have to scramble.
Yeah, but what I like, Samantha, just again, my experience is when an award is pending your IRB tends to go faster. Just surprised. So I like other people to have to scramble too.
You include that information when you're approaching the IRB committee that there's funding contingent on this approval.
Or you just share that with the ORS director or something, and
it helps to
somehow somehow
grease the wheels a little bit. Sure, but you know, if we just want to be aware that sometimes that window is a little short. So.
I'm just reading the chat. So we have one attendee that said, I would love to hear any experiences where these additional documents aided in making the proposals more competitive.
Yeah, I would defer to Ginger on this one too. My experience is like the more things that the program officer can say that's good about your proposal, the easier it is to make a recommendation for funding and justify it relative to other proposals. The more things that they have issues with, including these documents, like your data management plan doesn't look like you have really thought about that. Looks like you're going to have postdocs, but you really haven't thought about mentoring them. If that comes up in the review panel, that all has to be shared in their, in their like appraisal. So like these are, from my perspective, the easier things to do. They are time consuming, but doesn't require a ton of like cognitive effort. You just have to do it once and then modify them. But again, I wanted to defer to Ginger. So I've had things that get funded and there are lots of boxes were checked and things that were not, and they had issues with lots of things. So I don't know that any of these, make or break a proposal, but leads to questions leads to doubt leads to weaker recommendations at least that's my experience.
Yeah, and you just never know what happens in those review panels, right? I've been on both sides of those as the program officer and as a reviewer. And sometimes you can just watch something that you thought was here, just one little thing can just kind of tear, okay, that's not going to get funded now after all that person's conversation, or unlikely. The program officer can still pull it out. They have the ultimate power there, right? But it's a lot easier if it gets really good reviews and if all of those things are clean and have the information that's needed, right? So ask yourself or have a colleague who doesn't know anything about the actual project, read it and ask, what are those things, the questions that came into your mind, as you're reading it, and then make sure that you answer those. And sometimes those are related to equipment or facilities. And in particular, any chance you have to sort of strengthen your argument, hey, we've already got this great, facility, this great equipment, and we want to use it, or we've thought really carefully about how we're going to use security in this data for the data management plan and take care of that. They'll just show that you've thought very carefully about things, and they like to see that as part of the intellectual merit in particular.
And I appreciate that. I want to just piggyback and just say that I always tell faculty, do as much of the work for the reviewer as you can. This is completely new information for the reviewer. So they don't have any of the context that's in your head about this project and how it's going to happen. So you make it as easy on that reviewer as you can, so that when they're, some agencies will give you an actual rubric that they're going to give to their reviews, and so they're going through and scoring. So if you can just, what they're going to be scoring, make it easy for them. You might be the last one on the pile. Someone might be very tired when they're reading your proposal. And I love what you were saying, like, what can you do in these shorter documents that will strengthen it and punch it up, so that, again, you're doing the work for the reviewer, so they don't have to go back and think, well, did that person have the right lab for this? Make it easy for the reviewer if you can. And sometimes it's hard to get outside of your own self. And I like that idea of like have someone else look at it because you have all this context that your reviewer will not have.
I will say that for NSF, some of the documents are explicitly required to make, comments on from the panel summary. But I would say in terms of intellectual merit, like the Biosketch seems to be the thing that comes up pretty regularly in reviews, which is like this person has published in this area, their work is relevant, the work is relevant, their synergistic activities seem relevant. So that seems to be a document that some people seem to care about. And I, as a reviewer, care about it too. Like I want to make sure that there's capacity there.
Great. Any final questions? All right, so I wanted to let you all know that this resource, this recording, as well as any examples, will be posted on our ORSP training webpage. And I will also email everyone that registered for this workshop the information, including the links. So we're always here, happy to help. I would like to thank you, the attendees, for spending your afternoon with us. We appreciate your interest in research and bettering your endeavors. And last but not least, thank you to our presenters. We really appreciate valuable input to us today. So thank you.
Thank you.